All right, all right. I have no fucking clue how this works. We're going to try to make a parallax background in Godot, and this is going to be our first attempt because I know we're not going to fucking do it, right? So we're on attempt 1 of parallax background of fail time. So we're just going to make this into... We're just going to record our progress and try to put a fucking honest effort into this. So I'm going to continue my timer. We have 25 minutes left. I'm looking at the documentation, but I just don't understand some things here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make a new project, right? So we're going to go new project. We're going to start all the way over. We're going to throw everything in the fucking trash and go through the entire workflow. So we're going to do it for mobile, and we're going to call this project name, we'll call it fail time parallax 001. Fail time, let's just call it FT Parallax 001. How about that, right? FT Parallax 1 for fail time, parallax background 1. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to actually look for where we're going to put this. So we're going to go browse. We're going to go into our S drive. We're going to find the, we're going to put this in the Businessman Dan repos. So we're going to go S drive, R drive, git. We're going to go find BizDan here. And we made a new folder. We made a new folder called Fuck This. And we have a folder called Attempt Parallax Background, right? So we're going to go into Attempt Parallax Background. And really, we shouldn't call it that, should we? Let's go back over to our file system, right? This is a fucking disaster here, right? So let's go new folder and just call it like Attempt Parallax Background 001. Right? And then we'll go over here, new text document, C folder, C, I don't know, C the APB folders, dot underscore. All right? Do I want to change it? Yes, I do. Okay. So, go back one directory and look for the folders that start with APB for APB. Attempt parallax background. Like, I have no fucking clue how to do this, right? So we'll save it like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to close some of this shit. We're going to put this back on our other monitor. And we just want some way to... This is way too long of a fucking path name, right? So, fuck this. And then APB1 for attempt parallax background number 1. For our first attempt, we're going to go back into here. And we are going to... we're going to try to select a different folder. Now... Let's go to BizDan. Let's go into fuck this. APB01. Select this folder. Okay, FT Parallax 1. Let's just call it APB01, right? Because that's the... Let's put a prefix in front of it, though. I'm gonna put... I'm gonna stick with this. Project name APB001, right? Just so that I can see this and know the difference between this and this, right? Or we're going to get rid of this git version control. We're going to do none. We're going to do mobile. We're going to do create and edit. Okay. So now that we have that, I know the first thing we need is a scene node, right? The first thing we need is a scene node. So that's what we should do. We should create a scene node, right? So we're going to go over here, and I know that the first thing we need to do is we need to go to the 2D view. And we need, in this create root node, we want to create a root node scene. And I'm going to call this N2D main. We'll just call it node2D main. Hit enter. Okay, so now that we have this, I know that we can right-click here, and we can do add a child node, and we want to do a parallax background, right? So parallax... want a parallax background right here, right? So we're going to hit create. And then we know that the parallax background needs a parallax layer, right? So we see a parallax layer right here. So let's go add the parallax layer. Let's go create, and it's a child of the parallax background. And then in the parallax layer, we want to add a child node of a sprite, supposedly, right? So sprite 2D, okay, create. So now what we want to do is we want to add a background to this sprite. But how the fuck do we do that? Now, let's get rid of our, I don't know why the fuck I have chat on here. Let's go look at the entire screen here, right? Here's the entire screen, right? So we have the sprite 2D here, and we see texture, and it says texture is empty. So the obvious thing to me would be to, like, you know, go put a texture in here. But what kind of fucking texture, right? Viewport texture, canvas texture, compressed texture, right? New image texture. I've been trying image texture, new atlas texture, mesh texture, curve texture, all these different fucking textures, right? Well, which fucking texture is it? All right. So, I don't fucking know. There's a quick load. We could try the quick load. Let's just fucking try the quick load. Let's see what happens, right? So if we try quick load, no dice. Okay, that's because we need the assets in here, right? Right? So, we have our assets folder, for the main project. Fucking hell. Where are you? Okay, so this is our main project here. We have our assets. Why don't we just go take our assets folder? Let's copy it. And let's go into the fuck this folder. Let's take our project here, our attempt project. Let's go paste this right here, right? Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to go over here, and I saw some type of reloading happen. I'm going to go save what we currently have, Control S. And I don't know why I did this, but it says n_2D main. No, n2D main. Why the fuck? And then tscn, I don't know what that stands for, some type of scene thing. Let's just save that right here. Okay. So now, clicking Sprite 2D. Let's try that, texture, drop down, quick load. Let's try quick load again. Okay, so now quick load has the Clouds 256 grid overlay PNG. Why don't we just go open that? Okay, so that actually worked. Okay. So now the question is, like, is quick load the thing that we have to, like, select, right? Like, are all these creating another node and creating, like, a unnecessary wrapper around that? I don't fucking know, right? But we got a little bit further than we got last time, so let's Control S. Now there is a way to, like, click and drag to create a sprite, where you can just click and drag from your assets to create a sprite, but that feels very problematic to me. I want to know how to correctly set it up without using weird fucking hotkeys, right? Okay, so if we play this, no main scene has ever been defined. Select one. Sure, let's go select the current. Select the current scene, right? Now, if we start up, okay, so we see that the origin is obviously at the exact center of our texture, because we know that each one of these subdivisions is a 4x4 grid, overlaid over a 256. So there's a 64, each one of these is a 64 by 64 grid, which means that this point right here is like at 128, 128, or possibly not 128, 128, but 127, 127. Actually, nope, because we see a little thin white line, so we are at 128, 128, right? There is no exact center of this texture because it is a power of 2, right? Okay, so now that we have that, the question is, well, how the fuck do we get this to scroll? And I know that we want some type of script in main to control the different things in our game, right? Or we could put it in the parallax layer. Why don't we go put it in the parallax layer or parallax background? Because I know Josh was like, you like to do things your own way, blah, blah, blah. And it seems like Josh took a little bit of issue of, like, me trying to centralize all of my scripts into one place. So why don't we go do it here? And we see all these options here: add child node, instantiate, child scene, expand, collapse, cut, copy, attach script. So we want attached script right here. Now I believe this little thing is like a little shortcut, right? But let's do it right here. Looks like there's probably two ways we can do it. We're going to do attach script. and parallax background.gd. So, sure, why not? Parallax background.gd matches the node name, right? And I forget what, I think GD stands for Godot script, right? And here, let's go create it. Okay, so now that we have this ready function, we have this process function. Okay, nice little comment, called every frame. Okay, so then now that's called every frame, the next thing I want to do is I want to just save everything we have. So I believe it's Control-Alt-Shift-S to save everything, right? So if we go into scene, and we see save all scenes, Control-Shift-Alt-S. Yes, that was the correct move. Before we look into the documentation, let's just make sure that everything still runs, that we haven't fucked any shit up, right? Okay, it still looks good. And what we want to do here now is we want to look at that documentation, right? There's all this kind of stuff here, and we know that if it's not part of a camera, right? If it is not part of a camera, then we have to manually control the offset, right? So if we look at the documentation description, a parallax background uses one or more parallax child nodes to create a parallax effect. Each parallax layer can move at a different speed using the parallax layer.motion offset. This creates the illusion of depth in a 2D game. If not used with camera 2D, you must manually calculate the scroll offset. So it sounds like this motion offset is going to do absolutely fucking nothing if we don't have a camera. And to animate it the way we currently have it, we're going to have to animate scroll offset. That's the way we're going to have to do it. Okay? So with that said, we know there's a little bit of object-oriented code in here. So why don't we take scroll offset, right? Why don't we go into here, and we'll just say self.scroll offset, and that did not autocomplete worth shit, did that? That was like, oh, scroll offset? What the fuck are you talking about? Like, nothing. Okay. Well, nothing? Really, nothing. Self dot a whole bunch of fucking constants. A whole bunch of fucking, it's all this fucking uppercase stuff. No fucking, where else all the goddamn fucking properties? Parallax background. Am I looking at the right fucking documentation? Parallax background. It says parallax background. So where the fuck is all that in the autocomplete? Now, if it's not in the autocomplete, maybe the autocomplete is just broken. But I'm going to assume that it's not, but let's just try this. We'll try the scroll offset, right? Scroll offset, right? Okay, why don't we just write that? Scroll offset equals 0 or something. I don't know. Or maybe you have to set it. I don't fucking know. I think you might have to tell it the type. Oh, like some type of cast? Like a cast? So I don't know Python at all, so that's gonna be a problem. No parentheses. So that obviously doesn't look like it's gonna run, right? It's basically telling me we don't know what the fuck we're doing. Error at 1126. Cannot assign a value of type int to vector 2D. Oh yeah, so it is a vector though, right? Is it because the offset is an x and a y? Okay, so vector 2. Okay, so let's go do that. So let's go do vector 2 and then put a 0, 0, right? Okay, so now the question is, does that, okay. So I'm still fucking confused about how, like, the self dot, right? It's not in the fucking autocomplete. It's like, why the fuck do I have autocomplete if it doesn't fucking work, right? Because then it's just a fucking distraction, right? Like, this full fucking bullshit is a fucking distraction. It's not very helpful. Okay. So, yeah, okay, yep. Vector, and then in parentheses the number. Okay, so why don't we go run this and see if it actually compiles, and if it compiles, then I'm kind of fucking annoyed, because it's like, I don't know why I'm so fucking cranky, because it's like, I don't know, like, it's not unreasonable of me to say, hey, your IntelliSense should probably fucking work if you have it, right? Like, am I off base here? Like, okay, so that's doing exactly what I thought it should do. So if we want some type of, like, state, do we just declare var? That's what I was seeing in the tutorials, right? So var, let's just call it, I don't know what to call it. Try this, pb parallax background equals self. Okay, yeah, let's try that. Okay, let's try that. So right here, pb for a temporary variable. pb is kind of like action script, interesting. pb colon, parallax background. Oh, I need var. Okay. So I gotta go like var like that. And then let's just see if it shows up. pb dot scroll. No, okay. Let's pb dot nothing. Yeah, so what the fucking hell? You know, I don't really use IntelliSense I don't really use oh, remove the parentheses? Oh, sorry, that's force to habit. Okay. Okay, pb dot scroll off. Yeah, I don't fucking get it. Okay, so yeah. Okay. So, can we just comment things out? Oh, no. Is that gonna wreck the indentation? Because I know it's Python, so... Okay. So, I don't fucking know. Let's try to create some globals, or some member variables. And... I don't really want to get confused here, so I'm just gonna put an m underscore in front of my member variables, just so that I know they're member variables that I've created. And we're just gonna call this, I don't know, offset scroll offset x, and then var member scroll offset y. So we're gonna try not to get like totally OCD with like super shorthand names. We're gonna try to like do this kind of like more like a normal person. Though it's also very important to me that I know what I'm looking at. So I want to just make sure that I absolutely know that these are my member variables and not member variables that are, that we're getting from, say, inheritance, or they're just the standard member variables of the derived object that we are working with. Okay, so let's just go here and do, now I don't believe we have to do self, right? Okay, actually I'm curious about this. Does it pick that up? No, it doesn't. Okay, so let's assume, can we go Control D? No Control D? Okay. Expected expression after plus plus, it doesn't work that way? You don't need self? Okay. Okay, yeah, and okay, my question is what happens if we do that? Let's try that. Okay. So... Oh, that is fucked. That is so fucked. That is... I don't like that. Like, that's helpful. Like, that helps. But that irritates me. Yeah, that fucking irritates me. I like to be as kind of explicit as possible, so I do kind of like that self there. But that also means that we can't... And we can't even fucking do this, right? We can't even do this, which, you know, would make some sense, right? Like that first idea, right? Okay, so that's fucking stupid, but okay. All right, let's try not to be too stubborn. Okay, let's try not to be too stubborn. Let's fucking hate this, but let's just fucking do it. Also, this is just like the built-in editor. You can use VS Code, etc. Yeah. I like to keep things as simple as possible, so I don't really want to use Visual Studio. Well, VS Code might be okay. VS Code, because VS Code isn't like a whole bunch of gigs like Visual Studio, right? Like the VS Code versus Visual Studio. VS Code is like the kind of like, my understanding is VS Code is just like they threw Visual Studio in the trash and they started over, and so they have like a lot less. It's a lot less clunky. Okay, so let's go scroll offset and X, and then just plus plus. And then did that not work? Am I not, is plus plus not an operator in Python? Is that like not how it works? Is that just not how to increment a variable in Python? How do you do that? Plus plus is not Python or GD script. Python increment by 1. Oh, plus equal 1? Alright. Alright, Python. Okay. Fine. Fine. Alright. Fair enough. Okay. Okay. It's such a common thing to increment and increment and de-increment that, or decrement. Yeah. But it's important to say it's not Python. It's much different. Yeah, so it's, so my understanding is it's like, it is an extension. So is it an extension of Python, or is it like built off of Python? Right? Because I mean, those are... It's its own thing? Okay. I see. So it looks like Python because they stole a lot from Python, and so you can kind of expect it to be like Python, but it's not. Right? Okay, fair enough. Godot script is something separate. Okay, oh, nice. That's actually nice, because I've heard about Python being slow as fuck. All right, so we're going to increment the scroll offset, and we're going to do that every frame by 1, and then we're just going to see if we can get something to move, right? And invalid operands, nil, and int operator plus. Okay. Set the scrolls to 0. It's just nothing at the moment. Oh, well, this is my own member variable. Oh, initialization. Oh, so you're saying initialization? Gaia. So it doesn't know what kind of type it is because it's going to use type inference. And so we have to set it to 0 so that it understands that it is a number. So that's what's going on there. All right. Okay. So now, let's go Control Alt Shift S to save everything, and then let's go. Why is it still stop? Why is it still fucking playing if it crashed? All right. Let's go play. All right. There we go. Something moved. Okay. Yay. Okay. So we got like 2 minutes left. So, in our parallax layer, I guess the question is there a way to, like, make this tile? And I actually do have the documentation open, but let's look here. So we have motion. I know there's something called mirroring. And I forgot if mirroring was the number of times it mirrors. Like, the number of times it duplicates itself. Let's just try that. Let's just go X. And let's just put, like, a 99. And then Y, let's put a 99 here. Because I think mirroring was actually duplication, which doesn't sound right to me, but when I was reading the documentation, I think I remember mirroring being duplication. So let's just see what happens, right? Okay, that is... no... Oh, it's the... It flips back on itself. So it scrolls, and then it... So that is... It's, what do you call it? Mirroring is more like a modulus being applied to the scroll, right? Mirroring seems like it's like a phase, so that, like, once you scroll past the limit, it keeps on going over and over again. Let's go. I know that mirroring was in here, so parallax background. Let's go Control F. Mirroring. No? Mirror. No? That's inherited from something else then? Canvas layer? No? Object? What the fuck? Okay. So, mirroring. Parallax layer. Oh, because we were in parallax background probably, right? So, I'm the idiot here. Parallax background, and what we want to find is parallax layer here. And then mirroring. Okay. So, motion mirroring, motion offset, motion scale. Why don't we just read this? So, we have like 37 seconds. We'll go a little bit over time here. Good lord, you're using the web version? No, you mean the documentation? I'm using the documentation on the web. I'm not using the web version, right? This is an executable, but this is the documentation, right? So, cannot see the top of my screen? Hold on. Oh, you can see the top. You can see my taskbar, right? So, yeah, it's on the top. Yep. So on the very top. I do that so, like, all of my taskbars for all of my different monitors are right next to each other, because then on my top monitor... so on my top monitor, my taskbar is on the bottom. On my bottom monitor, which is the monitor you're looking at, my taskbar is on the top, so I can easily access both taskbars at the same time. It does really fuck with you, because most programs... This is fucking sad, but most programs... don't know how to resize their window correctly when you have your taskbar on the top. So that's put that in the you know how like the whole deviation from the norm is punished. That's another example of deviation from the norm being punished. Oh, you want to deviate from the norm and put your taskbar somewhere else besides the bottom? Well, fuck you and all the programs you use. Okay, so mirroring. Let's go read that though. There's not too much in here. Why don't we just go read the whole fucking thing? Parallax layer. Okay, so it inherits node TD, which inherits canvas item, which inherits node, which inherits object. Alright, a parallax scrolling layer to be used with parallax background. Description. A parallax layer must be the child of a parallax background node. Each parallax layer can be set to move at different speeds relative to the camera movement, or the parallax background scroll dot... Oh god, I am so dyslexic as fuck. Parallax background dot scroll offset value. This node's children will be affected by its scroll offset. Okay, any changes to this node's position and scale made after it enters the scene will be ignored. Okay, so position and scale. After it enters the scene, ignored. Okay, so we have some vectors, motion mirroring, motion offset, motion scale. Okay, property descriptions. Motion mirroring. Okay, there's a setter and a getter. The parallax layers texture 2D repeating. Useful for creating an infinite scrolling background. Okay, so that's what I want to do, right? If an axis is set to 0... texture 2D will not be repeated. Okay, so this very first property looks like the thing that we actually want to modify. But, you know, there's not much in here, so we might as well read through everything for completion, because there might be something else that we want to know about. If the length of the viewport axis is bigger than twice the repeated axis size, it will not repeat infinitely, as the parallax layer only draws 2 instances of the texture at any given time. I see. So, I was like, let's just make a really fucking tiny sprite. Let's just make a tiny little sprite, and then we can just repeat it over and over again. But we just read the documentation, and the documentation says, fuck you, we're not gonna fucking tile that. What, you want an infinitely repeating background? Fuck you, because we're only gonna duplicate it once on each axis. Alright, so now we know that. So that's actually good that we kept on reading, because, yeah. Despite its name, the texture will not be mirrored, it will simply be repeated. So this is what I was talking about, right? I was like, hey, I remember like reading something about mirroring, and I'm pretty sure it's not actually mirroring. It's something to do with repeating the texture. And there we go. That's where that is right here. And that's why I was messing with this, because I was like, oh, we can just mirror it, and mirroring is actually duplication, right? So that's why I was putting a big number in there, because I was thinking of that would like tile it 99 by 99 or something. And that's definitely not what the fuck it did, so let's move on. Okay, so vector 2, motion offset. Okay, so there is a setter and a getter. Parallax layer offset relative to the parent parallax backgrounds. Parallax background dot scroll offset. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay, so it's just an offset on top of an offset. So I feel like some of these names are complete shit. Like, motion offset is just an offset on top of an offset. And you're going to call it... Whatever, let's move on. Okay, so motion scale. It all just starts with motion. It's almost like motion is just like a namespace, and it has, like, nothing to do with anything, right? It's like, oh, parallax. Oh, yeah, parallaxing things. They move, so therefore the namespace on all these identifiers is going to be motion. That's what I'm getting from this. I'm just so salty. I'm so cranky. Okay, so motion scale multiplies the parallax layer's motion. If an axis is set to 0, it will not scroll. Okay. All right. So, knowing that, why don't we just go try the motion mirroring? And despite its name, the texture will not be mirrored. It will just be repeated. And it's saying that if our viewport is too big, then it's not even going to be repeated, right? So it's not even going to give us 2. It's just not going to fucking work at all. Okay, well, the question, I guess, then would be, like, how do we... If axis is at 0, that... Okay, so motion mirroring. Okay, let's go look at this. So motion mirroring, where is that? Oh, I see. That actually we were modifying the correct property. Okay, so I see what's going on here. So this is the thing, like, a lot of me not knowing what the fuck is going on is that, like, I just don't know how to connect the UI to the documentation. So now that I'm looking at this and I see that this is motion and this is scale, offset, and mirroring, there you go. So I wasn't spewing bullshit when I said that motion is a namespace, right? Motion mirroring, motion offset, motion scale, and we can see that namespace reflected in this grouping here. Okay, so I wasn't off base there. So this isn't really just scale. This is motion underscore scale. This is not just offset. This is motion underscore offset, and this would be motion mirroring. Now the next question is, what would happen if I just put a 1 in here, right? Do we get like a 4x4? Like, what happens? Let's just try that. Let's go Control-Alt-Shift-S. Let's go play it. And nothing. Okay. And if we put that back to 0, Control-Alt-Shift-S. Okay, go play that again. And then, okay, so now it's moving. Okay. So if we make this big enough, supposedly, we can supposedly get it to, if we do it big enough, we can get it to scroll. But the problem is that the texture is just too fucking small, right? Okay, so I think that tomorrow we'll just try this again from the beginning to just get through the whole flow of, like, doing this and get used to how we're doing these. But, like, I already put in my 2 fucking hours, right? I know I didn't get much done, but I put in, yeah. I like it more. Yeah. Yeah, I like Godot more than GameMaker. I do think that this is a better choice. The thing is it's just that, like, you know, it just really annoys me when it's like, you know, it's not just about knowing the source code with these kind of engines, right? It's not just about knowing the source code. It's like you also have to, like, understand how the IDE works, right? You have to understand how the, like, interface works, right? If you don't understand the UI, it doesn't matter. You could read all the documentation and you could, like, memorize the documentation, and you probably wouldn't be able to make shit, right? Because you don't know how, like, all the controls work, right? So I don't know. I just find that annoying because it's like, well, you notice that, you know, when I write my own code, I try to stay away from an IDE. And I try to stay away from an IDE because, like, I just want to learn how to code and write code. And, like, I hate it when I have to spend time on, like, how the fuck does all these controls work? A lot of stuff makes work really well only if you already understand the organization. Yeah, so I'm starting to understand the organization a little bit better, right? So one of the things that was pissing me off earlier was, like, this inspector menu right here. You can have something highlighted down here, right? I highlighted clouds. Now it's in the inspector. Okay, if I highlight Sprite 2D, now Sprite 2D is in the inspector, right? I highlight clouds. Oh, wait, no, they're both highlighted. Okay, so this isn't inspecting shit. Oh, do I have to double-click it? Okay, double-click it. Okay, so that's a thing. Oh, wait. Okay, so... Uh-huh. Okay, that's... Yes, that menu is just the file system. When you drag stuff in, it imports it. Yeah, so, okay, well, I'm not really talking about this versus this. What I'm talking about is the correlation. So, what I'm talking about that's annoying me is the correlation between what's happening here in the top left and what's happening in the bottom left and what's happening in the right over here, right? This is kind of confusing. So right now I have both of these things highlighted, right? I have Clouds 256 PNG highlighted. I have Sprite 2D highlighted. Well, if I just glance over at the inspector and I'm not paying close attention, I might think right now that I'm looking at Clouds 256.png because, hey, this thing's highlighted. And when you highlight it, then it pops up over here, right? But it's not. It's Sprite 2D right now, even though both of these things are highlighted, right? Now, if I double-click Clouds 256, okay, so now we're really looking at Clouds 256 over here. Okay, cool. Okay, I want to switch back to Sprite 2D. Okay, let's click Sprite 2D. All right, that worked. Okay, what about clicking this? Okay, that didn't work. Double-click. Click this. Double-click. Click. So for some reason over here, it requires a double-click. Okay, so over here, it takes double-click, and then over here, it takes a single-click, double-click, single-click, single-click. Double-click, single-click. Okay, so that's kind of fucking weird. Well, the file system stuff won't have properties, but it is a bit unclear. Okay. Yeah, so if we double-click this, well, I see it in the inspector, right? Like, I see inspector Clouds 256, and then if I click Sprite, I see Sprite 2D, right? So that's kind of confusing, because we have these two things highlighted. And then also, it's like, why is it, if I want to see this in the why do I have to double-click this, and why do I have to only single-click this? That seems inconsistent. A lot of this stuff I don't even think about with how used to I am, yeah. Like, all the weirdnesses, right? Because, like, if I just double-click, right? Like, one way, no, if I double-click, it tries to rename it. Interesting. Yeah, that just seems kind of inconsistent. But, yeah, I get it. Like, some of these things you probably don't think about if you're already used to how it works, right? Okay, so I think, let's go Control-Alt-Shift-S. Oh, by the way, what was your... Yeah, so I'll send you the repo for this if you're interested. I'm gonna stop the stream because now I'm like 15 minutes over time. I didn't get much done, but I think we made a little bit of progress. I'm hoping that as we start to get kind of acquainted with how the engine works, that progress will be faster. I'm hoping that like eventually what it'll be is once I know how this interface works, that it'll just be like, oh, just read the documentation, right? And then I know how to do it. So this is what I was talking about, right? Like, you know how you were saying that it's going to be like much faster to read the documentation than it is to do a tutorial, right? And while I agree with that, if I don't know how to navigate the IDE at all, then a tutorial is going to be faster than the documentation. But hopefully, once I understand how this works, then I can just not do any tutorials anymore, and I can just read the documentation, right? That's what I'm hoping here. So I'm gonna stop the. I'm gonna go to my fail time title screen. Fail time. Parallax background. Video 1. We're gonna try to do a parallax background again from scratch tomorrow after we're done doing our study session and we're into the code session. And I'm just gonna fucking upload this to YouTube. And see if we can make better progress the next time within the time allotment of 1 hour. All right, so I'll still have chat open if you want to send me your GitHub stuff, because I will add you to the project if you want to take a look at the source.